If your phone ever buzzes past midnight with a stranger's green ring lighting up their notes over your workplace, don't do what I did. I told myself it was nothing, that Instagram weirdos are just part of the background noise, like spam calls you never answer. In the daylight, hearts and views feel like confetti. After dark, they start looking like footprints. 5 of us learned the hard way that some of those footprints walk right up to your front door. I'm 19, a barista on the late shift, the kind of shift where you learn regulars' orders and which machines squeal at closing. Our manager didn't mind phones as long as we were moving, so I posted little moments, milk art, fogged windows, the glossy counter I wiped down every night. A week before this, I noticed a new viewer with a username that looked like a sneeze, KQD_. They weren't following me, never liked anything, but there I was always first on every story, within seconds. It felt like someone leaning forward at the glass, breathing. I blocked. The following night, something else popped up, a fresh account with the same chaos of letters, following me before I'd even tied my apron. I left it alone. I told myself not to act scared where I work. At 10:54 p.m., I was counting the till when Instagram notes blinked up near the top bar. A green ring. A note from the new nonsense account with a location pill I recognized instantly, the coffee shop's exact name. Added 1 minute ago. My heart didn't drop, my hands did, right onto the drawer. I walked to the mop sink to breathe and decided I wouldn't give them a show. I didn't tell my coworkers. I finished chores like a robot, clocked out, and crossed the parking lot pretending my bones were normal. The bus stop by the florist smells like cut stems even at night. I sat, slouched like I wasn't watching the reflections in the dark glass. No one shared the bench. A DM request slid in. A dot. Just a single period. Then a close friend's green ring on their profile and a story I didn't want to press but did anyway. It was me, tilted from behind, taken across the street. My hoodie, my tote with the tiny coffee bean pin. The second slide was a black interior with streetlights moving past. I could see my own building in the distance like I was looking through a mouth. I texted, "Who are you?" They typed, "Follow for follow, smiley face." And a note, 4 minutes old, with my street's name. I live with a roommate. The second I pictured this person thinking I lived alone, I stood, walked like my keys were weapons, and called. My roommate told me to keep walking, keep her on speaker, not to look behind me. I made it to our door. While my hands shook in the lock, the DM pinged again, "You look lonely. Company?" Smiley. The knob turned from the other side of the wood. Not a knock. A deliberate twist. I yelled her name so loud it scraped. She came down the hall in bare feet. We deadbolted. I called the police. I baited the account to stall, typing that I'd open, that I'd step outside to talk. The message bounced. They'd blocked me. Later, I'd watched the squad car wash blue over the walls. The officers never found anyone, and there were no cameras near the bus stop. For a week after, I kept seeing green rings in the corner of my eye where there weren't any. I started waiting inside for rideshares and turned my account private. What sticks in my head isn't the twist of the knob or the picture from the car window, it's the speed. The way a stranger goes from a letter soup handle to knowing your door in about as long as it takes milk to steam. The next one happened to someone with my same major 2 years ahead of me, which is probably why it hit me weirdly personal. She has one of those names you don't see everywhere, the kind your Starbucks cup always butchers. A Tuesday afternoon, she opened Instagram and saw a message request from her name. Same first and last. Same profile picture, her graduation photo with the sun flare on the lens. She thought it had to be a joke, a friend messing around with an underscore. The bio had a quote she recognized from her high school yearbook. "Hi," the account wrote. "I'm you." She replied with a tired joke, "Then tell me where I left my keys." The account sent a link made of nonsense, letters and digits longer than the messages. She stared at it like it bit. Curiosity walked her through anyway. The page it loaded looked older than the internet, white background, clunky lines, Times New Roman text that bled together. It wasn't elegant. It was efficient. Her name at the top with a city. Parents' names. Sibling. Old soccer team photo. Archive screenshots of her highlights in order, right down to the tiny icons. Her elementary school from a PDF released years ago by a district newsletter. A newspaper clipping where her face was the third in a row at a science fair. It felt curated by someone who didn't care if it was pretty as long as it was complete. Her stomach went electric cold. Back on Instagram, the other her started sending chunks of piecemealed captions from her grid, copied word for word, as if to say, "See? I am you." The account wasn't following anyone she knew. It didn't follow anyone at all. She blocked and went private. She told herself it was just a weird scraper bot doing cosplay. She got busy, went to class, shoved the thought into a drawer. That night, as she was brushing her teeth, a tap landed on her door that sounded like a coin being placed down. She looked through the peephole and saw no one. On the porch mat was a manila envelope with her name handwritten in a steady, careful hand. Inside, 3 printouts of the same archaic web page, and at the bottom of one, a red pen circle around a line she hadn't noticed. Her freshman year dorm address, scraped from a tagged post by an old roommate. On the back, in the same red pen, someone had added her current house number. Police came, and she felt small telling them about a font. They took the envelope and nodded with tight, understanding faces. You only get better at reading after something bad happens. The detective said words like open source intelligence, and data brokers, and public scrape, and none of the words landed on the right thing in her chest: the coin sound, the neat handwriting, the pause you make at a door just long enough to place something down. She changed everything: passwords, privacy settings, where she tagged, who could tag her. For months, if a notification made her phone light up in the dark, the room around that rectangular glow felt like it wasn't really hers. I met her last fall at a campus event. She told me that the part people miss is how ordinary all of it looks until suddenly you're holding a paper with your life printed in a font that makes it feel older than you are. The page is nothing. The walk to your porch is everything. Here's what nobody tells you about boundaries online: you think they're lines you draw with settings, but to the wrong person, they're dotted lines leading home. I was 26, renting the cheapest one-bedroom in a pre-war walk-up that smelled like boiled cabbage in the halls and lavender in my apartment because I was pretending I wasn't afraid to live alone. My Instagram was public, mostly boring: thrift finds, a crooked plant shelf, the way morning light made my tiny kitchen look intentional. His account arrived like a fruit fly, harmless until it wasn't, dropping the same compliment under 10 old photos in a row, then a wave of DMs that read like he was answering a conversation I never started. I ignored him, because that is the internet's version of closing a door. He didn't like closed doors. At 11:08 p.m. on a Thursday, he knocked in a cheerful rhythm like he expected me to answer smiling. I opened the door 2 inches, chain still on, and saw the face from his profile, older, the filter lifted. "Why'd you block me?" he asked, like I owed him a receipt. Fear has a sound when it moves through a chain. It's a high metal note as you try to close the gap and someone's hand finds the wood. I slammed, he pushed, the door shuddered with a hollow core I had never noticed until it mattered. I yelled that I was calling the police, and dialed on speaker so my voice had backup. He left before the sirens, but not before slipping a note under the door that read, "You don't have to be rude." The officers found him circling the block in a dented sedan with printouts of my grid on the passenger seat, strokes of yellow highlighter over every photo where a street sign, a pizza box, a school logo gave him little breadcrumbs to follow. He said Instagram made him feel close to me. I realized I had been narrating directions without meaning to. Some men announce themselves with paragraphs and pity, some only bring a face. The first night I saw him, he was just a figure pausing by my hedges, the latex of the mask catching the streetlight like wet leaf. I had left 2 inches of window uncovered because the room felt less like a box when I could see a sliver of sky. He drifted away, and I convinced myself he was part of someone else's dare. An hour later, the follow request appeared with a profile picture of that same mask, stiff grin and 2 wide eyes, the bio empty except for the word Peekaboo. I declined and wrote to a friend that some people really commit to a bit. The second night he returned, slower, like he practiced the route and was timing it to my lights. My best friend was on the couch that evening. We crouched below the window together, both of us aware of how loud breathing sounds when you're trying not to make any. He tracked the curve of my driveway and stopped at the door like a thought arriving halfway. 3 soft knocks, then silence long enough to count my own pulse. When he turned, he bent at the stoop and did something I didn't understand until morning. We never called, we watched him drift back into the mouth of the street and vanish where the trees swallow the light. In the morning I found it, a Polaroid tucked under the welcome mat, the frame still warm from the trapped heat of the concrete. It was a photo of my own door taken from the exact spot where I stood holding it, timestamp in the corner, the caption later that day on a blank account story, nice place. I went private, called a neighbor who swung by with a spare camera he'd meant to install anyway, and learned that quiet streets are only quiet until you start listening to them at 3 a.m. Not every nightmare walks, some are delivered, 1 swipe at a time, until the distance between your thumb and your front door is about 3 inches of glass. I found him on reels the way you find potholes, suddenly, with a little jolt you feel in your teeth. He leaned into his camera and whispered like a stage villain who forgot there was a real world past the lens, talking about following people home as if he were reading a grocery list. I clicked away, then got the notification, new follower. Before I could set my phone down, a DM asked what I was doing right now, and seconds later, he tagged me in a video with my first name in the caption. I blocked, heart rate spiking, but when I checked again out of the same curiosity that got me into this, there was a story waiting, a screenshot of my street from Google, pin dropped over a blue door that matched mine. Under it he'd written, "Be brave," with a winky face that made my mouth go dry. I called building security, who reminded me we don't have building security, just a super who sleeps hard and a camera that records to a cloud no one checks until after something happens. At 12:17 a.m. tap landed on my door, not knuckles, not a fist, just the soft percussion of a phone case. Through the peephole I saw an eye, then the flat black of a screen as he filmed my door, voice low, telling someone, or everyone, that courage is a door opening. I spoke through the door that the police were on the way, which they were, because I had already dialed with my thumb shaking and the phone on mute. He laughed, a small, ordinary sound that didn't match his videos, and trotted down the stairs, the camera bobbing, the door's little fisheye swallowing him like a coin. I changed nothing and everything, curtains closed, captions cautious, doors locked before the app, every night.